Today, 26th of March 2022, is a historic day for the people of Aceh. Achenese diaspora in Scandinavia, and together with the people of West Papua and South Moluccas, have gathered here in the City of Peace, The Hague, to commemorate the 149th anniversary of the Dutch declaration of war against the sovereign independent state of Aceh. That was on the 26th of March 1873. On this day, 149 years ago, the Kingdom of the Netherlands officially declared war against the sovereign state of Aceh and invaded our country. That war lasted almost a century, one of the bloodiest and the longest colonial war in human history. The Dutch historian Paul van Trier made these conclusions in his book, The Aceh War. Holland had never fought a war greater than the one with Aceh. In terms of time, this war can be said to be the 18 Years' War. In terms of casualties, more than 100,000 dead. It was a military event that had no equal in the history of our land. The war against Aceh was for Holland very much more than a mere armed conflict. It was, for a century, the burning point of our national colonial and international politics, the Acheh-Nederland, Amsterdam, 1969. On 27th of December 1949, the Dutch gave instead their entire colonial empire of the Dutch Indies to the new entity, the Jakarta-based Republic of Indonesia, not as required by the decolonialization rule and principles. Thus, Indonesia became the only successor state to colonial empire of Dutch East Indies, with a territory as large as continental Europe from Moscow to Lisbon. There is no getting away from the fact that a successor state of a colonial empire is also a colonial empire by definition. This illegal transfer of sovereignty by one colonial power to another, namely Indonesia, is a flagrant violation of the principles of the decolonialization procedures of the United Nations, which stipulated that sovereignty over a colonial territory is not transferable by a colonialist power to other colonialist powers. UN resolution must return Aceh to the Achenese, the rightful owners. As a matter of fact, Achenese are glorious independent state, and we would like to remember or remind your government about the legal standing of the above-mentioned declaration of war. We believe that these two nations are still historically bound by a century of liberation struggles vis-a-vis the colonial empire of the Dutch East Indies. And the above war declaration has not yet officially ended, as there is no peace treaty signed between the warring parties, between Holland and Aceh. On the basis of this illegal transfer of Aceh to Indonesia, Aceh Sumatra National Liberation Front, or ASNLF, was then established in 1976, and the declaration of an independent Aceh was issued on 4th December in the same year. The re-establishment of Aceh as the successor state of the historic state of Aceh is in line with a number of UN resolutions. Among others are the Resolution 1514-XV, 2621-XXV, etc. Since the invasion of Aceh in March 1873 until now, our country has never been in peace. An estimation of 100,000 Achenese had been killed at the hands of the Dutch colonial wars. The brutalities were marked by a particular incident of massacre by the Netherlands Special Military Unit Marechaussee, carried out by General Colonel G.C.E. van Dalen. About children were massacred in cold blood in Kutareh, Gayo, 14th of June 1904. Under direct command of General J.B. van Hout, the then Governor General of the Dutch East Indies in Aceh. For 3 decades since 1976, Aceh once had become a killing field for the 𝘼𝙘𝙝𝙗𝙗, and between 1989 and 1998, Aceh was then declared as a military operational area DOM and ruled by reign of terror. The atrocities perpetrated through these years have no equal in the history of Aceh fighting against any colonial powers in the past. Arbitrary arrests, extrajudicial killings, routine torture, and disappearance of thousands of civilians had become commonplace. An estimation of 30,000 innocent Achenese lost their lives in military custody, in hidden mass graves, or in secret concentration camps. These military operations continued unabated with the same intensity and brutality, and martial law was then imposed between May 2003 and May 2004. Thus, another reign of terror was again in progress until Aceh was devastated by the Indian Ocean deadly tsunami on the Boxing Day of 2004. This natural disaster, coupled with a prolonged war, had brought warring parties, the Republic of Indonesia and the Free Aceh movement come, signed a peace deal known as Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, in Helsinki, Finland. One of the many provisions in the MOU is the establishment of two human rights institutions, Human Rights Court and Trust and Reconciliation Commission. The Regional House of Representatives enacted a bylaw with regard to TRC on the 31st of December 2013. But Human Rights Watch stated that the violations in Aceh were too serious to be addressed only by the Truth Commission, which cannot. States have an obligation under international law to prosecute serious abuses of human rights and war crimes. Acheh-Nederland therefore requests your government to take responsibility and reopen the case of this illegal transfer of our fatherland Aceh to the Republic of Indonesia. It is also a cardinal principle of international law that legitimacy of a state's control over a territory depends on how it acquired that territory. In the case of Aceh, the territory was unlawfully occupied by the Netherlands and handed over to the newly created entity called Indonesia without due process of the United Nations principles on decolonization. The right of Aceh to be restored as an independent state again is further affirmed by the UNESCO document 23, 1990, paragraph 42, as follows. It is widely accepted that a group of people that is presently subjected to military occupation that traditionally has formed a nation of its own, or has been a part of different nations, that the one which occupies it is entitled to assert or to restore its self-determination. So by right and by all international conventions, Aceh would have become a free and independent state again, like it always been before the invasion. Thank you for your attention. Aceh! Aceh! Maluku! Maluku! Papua! Papua! Semua!